Ladies and gentlemen, Excellency Ambassador of Norway, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, let me warmly welcome you to our traditional Geneva Urban Debate. The Geneva Urban Debates are co-organized together with our colleagues and dear friends from UN Habitat, Geneva office, Graham Alabaster, Sir Leon Alabaster sitting near me, and we tackle current issues for local and regional governments related negotiations and other current issues. The Geneva Cities Hub, where I am co-director, and my name is Kamelia Kemileva, is a neutral platform helping local regional governments to practice multilateral diplomacy together with states, mainly, of course, where they have an impact and vetted interest. And in the case of plastic pollution, plastic waste, and the forthcoming UNEP session, there is a room of discussion to which extent local and regional governments might participate in the negotiations. The resumed fifth session of the UNEP from 28th of February to 2nd of March will constitute a not to be missed opportunity to include local and regional governments more consistently in the intergovernmental debate. During this upcoming session, the UNEP will discuss the elaboration of a new international treaty dealing with marine litter, the plastic pollutions, including the full life cycle of plastics. Various messages and various drafts are included and during this negotiation, including the need for the LFGs to meaningfully participate as well as share practices, but also challenges in the field of marine litter and plastic pollution, more globally. The speakers of today are numerous and from various backgrounds. We are first of all extremely happy to have the presence of Norwegian ambassador here in Geneva. Warm welcome to you, ambassador. And we have to mention that your minister, His Excellency Sveirung Roteva, no, he's not new president. There is exactly a new president. But anyway, Norway as a country is at the presidency of the UNEP. Although the co-facilitators for the resolution we are speaking today are coming from two other countries. We also have speakers from UN Habitat, the team dealing with plastic pollution, as well as from the Worldwide Fund of Nature, WWF, UNEP, Diana Rizzolio from the Geneva Environmental Network, 3 municipalities, Buenos Aires from Argentina, Odawara City from Japan, and Mombasa County from Kenya, as well as our friends and partners from UCLG and TICLEI, who represent the major group of civil society and city networks doing the lobby and the events with regard to the UNEP and local and regional governments' participation at the UNEP. For the very short housekeeping rules, let me tell you that we will start with the welcoming remarks from the ambassador, to be followed by a more global setting of the scene by Diana from the Geneva Environmental Network, who will give the general framework for the forthcoming UNEP and explain to us what is on the table as resolutions. After which we will listen to the 3 concrete examples from the cities of Odawara, Japan, Mombasa from Kenya, and Buenos Aires from Argentina, and take questions from the floor. Then Graham will take from me the moderation to give the floor to his former team in Nairobi, which you still regret because they are super good. So now Nele, Gino listening from us from Nairobi, they work on the plastic pollution and recycling from the UN Habitat point of view, as well as Yumi from the WWF, who will give her perspective from Southeast Asia. All the speakers will have 5 to 6 minutes, and all of them have been asked to acknowledge the LLG's importance in their work and experience and their thoughts, as well as, obviously, suggestions of how the LLGs can be included in the negotiation, in the resolution, and most importantly, in the implementation of the resolutions and the hopefully the forthcoming international treaty against plastic pollution. So, Ambassador, giving you the floor for this famous welcoming remark, which I announced twice, I would like just to mention that, as you know, in the forthcoming negotiation and resolutions, there are 2 drafts. One is from Peru, Rwanda, and approximately 50 more initial co-sponsors, between which Norway. And the other one is from Japan, with other co-sponsors, which are not announced. And while the resolution of Japan is preserving, Japan, as co-sponsor of Japan, is preserving some agreed language on local and regional governments, the resolution of Peru and Rwanda is not giving this language yet, but I presume this will come up into the negotiation. And I would like to hear your perspective and to hear your views about this forthcoming negotiation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamelia, and thank you to all for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure for Norway to take part in this because the issue of plastic pollution is a priority for the Norwegian government, and we believe that the most effective measure to solve this urgent matter is to put in place a legally binding instrument for the long term. So local and regional governments play an important role in addressing this issue, both in terms of preventing plastic pollution, but also as waste management often is a municipal responsibility. In Norway, local authorities hold the capacity on littering. The Norwegian Environment Agency has prepared guidance for municipalities and local governments to address littering and pollution according to the Pollution Control Act. And local authorities are also best placed to introduce additional measures to address important local sources of plastic littering and pollution. 13 larger municipalities in Norway have joined WWF in the initiative Plastic Smart Cities and have also introduced local action plans on marine plastic litter. So, as already mentioned, Norway holds the presidency of the 5th Environment Assembly, which will be held in Nairobi in February. And it will be over new minister, Mr. Espen Barth Eide, who will be in charge. No, but this is very recent, so that's fine. And there we will work to adopt a mandate for negotiating a global agreement on plastic pollution to guide our common actions, targeting the whole life cycle of plastic products. So the inclusion of all relevant stakeholders through the UNEP process is important for Norway, and you have mentioned some issues around that already. And what we know is that UNEP has already accredited 9 major groups, of which local authorities is one. Local governments have an important role in environmental matters and can help to implement global agreements, provide inputs to the discussions, and also share the experiences from being close to people and their local issues directly relevant to the global discussions. So what I would do is to encourage you to engage through your major groups at UNEP 5 and provide inputs to the negotiations of the draft resolution establishing the Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee towards a new agreement. So I think it's a question here of making sure that your voice is heard. Norway also believes that local and regional governments will play an essential role in implementing the commitments and obligations in a new global agreement on plastic pollution. So we look very much forward to hear your input on how this can be done in an effective manner. So thank you so much, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion here today. Thank you.
Tusen tack,
Varsågod.
Ambassador, for these very concrete words, which actually kick off the whole event. And I didn't want to speak too much, but you actually said the main thing I didn't say, which is that we will try to elaborate a very concrete proposal already today, and then after today working with partners about concrete language. So we've heard you very much. We will quote you in Nairobi to say that you told us to give concrete language into this negotiation. So thank you very much once again. I'm now turning, as announced, to Diana. Diana Rizzolio, who is from Geneva Environmental Network, extremely active in many areas, but right now, currently in these plastic dialogues, plastic discussions, and you know, doing a great job here in Geneva and beyond to coordinate stakeholders' activities, to make states discuss with civil society, with major groups, with experts. So already, thank you very much for what you are doing for us. You have been absolutely instrumental also for this event, bringing your networks, your expertise, your connections. Thank you very much for helping us. Now, Diana, you say always, you're very modest, you say you're not the expert, but to me you are one of the biggest experts for this plastic pollution discussions. I told you, we said before the event that there is already quite a lot of material, so to say, to discuss. The agreed resolution already from the previous UNEP sessions, the fourth one, which was held in 2019, adopted several resolutions on related to plastic litter, environmental sound management, single-use plastic products, etc. So these texts are there, they are agreed resolutions. And now the World Assembly of Environment decided to move on with literally legally binding instruments. So this is ambitious. We have two drafts on the table right now, and I would just ask, because I know you will speak about this, Pauline, my colleague, who actually forgot to introduce. She's in charge of the logistics. Thank you, Pauline. So Pauline is showing what you can see right now on the website of the UNEP Assembly, and the cluster number 1, so what is called cluster 1. It's not about COVID, don't be afraid. It's just cluster of the resolutions, marine and plastic pollution. We see the draft resolution ambassador from Norway mentioned, which is with initial co-sponsor Rwanda and Peru on an internationally legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. And the draft resolution I've mentioned also from Japan on an international legal instrument on marine plastic pollution. So what you see on the screen right now, you can see on the website of UNEP. And we know that many people are already very active on this resolution. So Diana, what is going on? How we can reinforce the language on the local regional governments, and or at least preserve the language of the agreed text, such as the COP26, such as the resolution from 2019, which mentions the role and the importance of the subnational, local and regional governments. Thank you.
Many thanks, Kamelia. Let me just start by thanking the Geneva Cities Hub and UN Habitat for inviting us to support this session of their Geneva Urban Debates as a timely moment. As it has been mentioned, next month, member states and other stakeholders will meet for the second segment of the 5th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, or as you have referred, UNEP or UNEP 5. And indeed, the plastic pollution, as it has been mentioned, is very high on the agenda of this important negotiation. Indeed, there are currently two resolutions, one proposed by the governments of Rwanda and Peru, as it has been mentioned, which was the outcome of a ministerial conference that took place in Geneva last summer. This resolution is supported by 53 member states, And there is actually a second resolution proposed by the government of Japan. Both resolutions call for a quick negotiation in the lead up to the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. They also call for the need for a global legally binding instrument and for convening an international negotiation committee towards a new agreement. You have some stakeholders that have prepared tables that are comparing the text of the two resolutions. I haven't seen a note on what you just mentioned about the text that is related to the local governance, but that's why we are here to discuss this issue. But let me just come back on something important, even though I understand that what you want here is to really discuss how we can bring the local governance language into the resolution. Just bringing here two reports that were released last week, one from the Stockholm Resilience Center that presented overwhelming evidence that chemicals and plastics have negative effects on planetary health and revealed that humanity has already exceeded the safe planetary boundary in that regard. And so they call for swift and ambitious actions to reduce the production and release of these pollutants. And there was also another report released recently, as there have been other reports in the past months, by the Environmental Investigation Agency that presents an overview of the irreversible pollution resulting from rampant overproduction of virgin plastics and their life cycle. This meaning that it's really time for ambition action now. And this is why so many member states are now in favor of pushing for having an instrument that will deal with the plastic pollution. It's also important to mention that in the run-up to the assembly, numerous stakeholders, member states, civil society organizations, business organizations, and now cities are calling for a legally binding UN treaty on plastic pollution and real ambition at in next month at UNEP. And we at the Geneva Environment Network, we have been mobilizing stakeholders in international Geneva and beyond, as it has been mentioned, throughout various dialogues on this topic, making links to other international negotiations and pinpoints that need further discussion in preparation to UNEP. And this is also why we are here, because we think that the proposition of having this discussion of what should be the voice of local governments in the solutions proposed is important. So we didn't address in our series so far the role of local governments and the numerous initiatives that have roots in local action to successfully deal with plastic in many phases of its life cycle. And I don't think it has been mentioned, but because you are the experts and you know that better than us, with more than half of the world population living in urban areas, and most of our plastic pollution coming from these areas, of course, we look forward to hear what the stakeholders you have invited today will bring to the discussion. And so coming back to UNEP and to the United Nations Environment Program, let me mention here, and it has been mentioned by Her Excellency Ambassador Mørch that UNEP engages with its local and regional governments through the major groups and other stakeholders mechanism. And there is a special group of local authorities, and you have invited the colleague who is co-leading that group currently, Jean-Baptiste, who very sadly is sick today due to the impacted by the virus that is affecting population worldwide, everyone. Yeah. So it's very sadly that, and there are various meetings in preparation of UNEP, including those major groups and stakeholders are meeting before UNEP and discussing the UNEP agenda. So really a lot that needs to be relayed in those meetings that will take place very soon. And I would like finally to, there are various colleagues from the United Nations Environment Program that are connected and are following the discussion today to see how we can, what's coming up here and how it can be taken into consideration in the work they are running. And so I will also, what is important here, we have a few, also in Geneva, a few events in preparation of the Assembly, where the outcomes of this discussion will be relayed. One is next week, and Ambassador Mørch is speaking also at that event, and another coming up with the president of UNEP, and the conclusions, but also the remarks that you have already made about the language of the resolutions and the fact that one seems to be building on the language that was already used in Paris Agreement and not the other. That you can be sure it's a message that will be relayed. And I am myself a former parliamentarian of the city where we are sitting, so I also look very much forward to the discussion that we will have here.
Thank you very much. I didn't know that you've been active in local government, so I will look at you differently as of today, with even more respect if this is possible. Thank you for this. I'm now turning to the very, I mean, all the speakers are very interesting, but especially speakers from local and regional governments. They are not mayors, except Dr. Godffrey Nato from the Mombasa county. They have their positions. Working with plastic in the cities, they don't represent the cities, but the city they come from. I will now first turn to Mr. Tatsuya Abe from Odawara city. But before this, I just wanted to show you what you find in almost most of the Swiss hotels. I did 5 around New Year's Eve. So if you are 4, like my family, my husband, myself, and 2 kids, and you go to the bathroom of the hotel, you find this. And this happened in 5 very luxury hotels, basically, Montreux, Lausanne, and Geneva. And so if you use it, they change it every day. So you can come up 1 week plus 4, you can come up to 28 of these. If you wish, only one family for 1 week stay in a hotel. So one of the questions I'm throwing here around to everyone is whether the city of Montreux or Lausanne, speaking about Switzerland because I live here, can act on this and say to the hotels, do something else, do, for example, not plastic bags, or it has to come from the government. It's a small joke. So think about this while listening very carefully to our next speaker, Tatsuya Abe. Tatsuya, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. I know it's 11:30 at Japan time, so thank you for being with us. Tatsuya?
Hi, this is Tatsuya Abe. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I cannot start my video. So when if I can, I want to start my presentation file.
We will share the video for you as agreed. So it is coming. We are sharing it right now, so you can start to speak. The video is on the screen.
Okay. Thank you very much, and nice to meet you, everyone, participants. My name is Tatsuya Abe from Odawara City in Japan. Many thanks to give me the good opportunity of our effort and practices against the plastic waste. At first, I want to give a brief presentation of our activities. Please, next slide. At first, I want to introduce our Odawara city. Odawara city is part of the Tokyo metropolitan area. It is located 40 minutes by train from the center of Tokyo. The city has a population of approximately 119,000. It is a scale called local city in Japan. Please next to move on to next slide. In Japan, the treatment and disposal of general waste is a basic and important task of municipalities. Waste separation is the most basic effort to control the amount of the waste and to recycle it. From 1997 in Odawara City, we started to separate garbages into 18 items in 9 categories. Since then, waste emissions have been on the downward trend. However, even in Japan, the separation and disposal methods differ depending on the municipalities. In Odawara City, project plastics are collected as non-vulnerable waste, and container and packaging plastics are collected as PET bottles and present plastic containers. However, some plastic waste is mixed with comparable wastes and emits CO2 when in showers. This has become a climate change issue. After collecting container and packaging process, they are handed over the recycler in accordance with the container and packaging recycling law. This law introduced expanded product responsibility. In addition, the Japanese national government has enacted and is currently preparing a new law that can recycle the product practice together with content and packaging. Let's move on to the next slide. And in Japan, garbage separation is established with the cooperation of citizens. We collected garbage at collection stations, and in Odawara City, over 6,000 stations set up. 250 residence associations manage and maintain 8 stations. Residences association are organizations that are voluntarily formed by residents by living in the certain areas. They are able to cooperate and tackle common issues in the region and organize all over Japan. In addition, in Odawara City, each resident association appoints a cleanup promoter to clean the station and this area based on the ordinations. Next slide. In February 2021, we signed the agreement with Waterstand Corporation and started to introduce water servers at public facilities. This agreement aims to reduce use the PET bottles. As now, a total of 19 units have been installed in scientific local locations. For the next slide. We also cooperate the student groups. Zero Plastic Waste Team Odawara were formed around graduates of civic schools. They find a lot of golf ball litter near rivers, so they are investigating the source. And as you know, identifying the source of marine debris is important for reducing discharge. If we can identify the source by citizen science, I believe that it is very good practice. For the next slide. In 2010, the Kanagawa Prefecture Waste Area Administrative Councils were established with 2 cities and 8 towns in order to join research solutions to wide area programs. In the next future, we want to announce the joint declaration on zero plastic waste, including cooperation between regions. Odawara City faces the sea, but bioplastic litter is also generated upstream of rivers. It is important to look at governments connected to the rivers to cooperate. That's all my first presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was, of course, short. Thank you for respecting the time, but it was very rich of showing, and I would love to learn more. We will distribute obviously your PowerPoint to participants about how much a single city in Japan can do something on regional or local level against fighting with plastics. Thank you very much, Mr. Abe, Tatsuya Abe, for this presentation. I am now turning to Dr. Godffrey Nato. You might know him or met him, probably, Graham. I don't know if you want to say how on our behalf to Dr. Nato.
Dr. Nato, delighted to have you with us, and hello from Geneva. I miss Kenya very much. I lived there for 23 years, so I have to say, and I'm not talking here. Anyway, we're delighted to introduce Dr. Nato, who we work with very closely, both in identifying the waste management streams. We've done a lot of work with UNEP in developing the monitoring system for solid waste recycling. So this is a very important part, and Dr. Nato has been one of the leading lights in this work that we've been doing in Mombasa. So thank you.
So Dr. Nato from Mombasa, Kenya, Mombasa County in Kenya.
Thank you very much, and I welcome you to Mombasa anytime. Mombasa is always hot, so you won't have the feeling of coldness that you get in Nairobi. Allow me to thank you for inviting me to make my remarks with regards to our experience in plastic waste. And I don't have a presentation, so I will just quickly respond to the questions that were posed to us, if that will be okay.
Absolutely, go ahead.
So I think with respect to specific issues that we think should be addressed from the municipality point of view, I think my take is that cities all over sub-Saharan Africa, I believe, are burdened by their incapacity to manage all the waste that is generated. For example, in Mombasa, we have a population of about 1.2 million, and we generate close to 1,000 tons of waste per day. But our capacity to collect or formally manage this waste is about 47%, according to the statistics that we generated in 2019. So I will say low collection efficiency is what triggers leakages of plastic into the environment. And any efforts that go towards improving collection efficiency will be the efforts that I think municipalities will really appreciate, considering that the capacity or the infrastructure that is necessary for improving waste collection quite requires a lot of funds or funding, if I may say. As I did mention, for us, we are at 47% efficiency. By 2019, I think by now, I would say we have improved to about 56%, although we haven't done the actual statistics so far. And that this achievement has been realized by the active engagement of our stakeholders. So I would say that the leakage of plastic waste into the ecosystem is what needs to be addressed, and how we need to address it is by making sure that the municipalities are supported to improve collection efficiency. With respect to any municipality measures that have been adopted to reduce plastic waste, I want to start by saying that the national government in 2018 enacted a ban on production, distribution, and use of flat and carrier bags. And as municipalities, we were asked to enforce this regulation, which we have been doing very, very well. So you will find flat and carrier bags within the waste stream in the city of Mombasa. But locally, I think as county government of Mombasa, what we have done, we have recently enacted a legislation that forces waste generators to segregate their waste, particularly the households, into two streams, what we call the wet waste and the dry waste. The dry waste mostly, of course, composing of the plastics, cardboards, paper, and metal. And we have started putting in place infrastructure to make sure that we enforce this piece of legislation. As of now, we are building the necessary infrastructure for retrieval of dry waste from our waste stream. Right now, we are building material recovery facilities as a county, and also we are receiving very, very significant support from other partners, particularly WWF Kenya that has come in strongly, and also hand in hand Eastern Africa that have pledged to support us to make sure that we segregate our waste and add value to the waste stream that then can generate some income. I also want to report that we have other development partners like Coastal and Marine Resource Development, Comrade, which is a local agency that has established what we are calling the Mombasa Smart and Sustainable City Forum, that brings together all the stakeholders who are involved in either the production, utilization of plastic waste. And we meet oftenly to discuss strategies of trying to reduce the plastic in our waste stream. With respect to who we collaborate with in terms of municipalities, I want to report that at the moment we have an active engagement with the eThekwini municipality in Durban, South Africa. And we have had several peer-to-peer learning exchanges. And what has come out of this strongly is that Durban is ahead of us in terms of waste management. And we are borrowing a number of good things from them, particularly the issue of emphasizing and focusing on segregation of waste at source. With respect to issues relating to marine litter and plastic pollution reduction and prevention, which are being managed at the national level, which would like to see more involvement of the local authority, I wish to report as follows. In our context, particularly for waste management in Kenya, waste management is a devolved function. And the devolution is with respect to the collection, transport, and disposal of the same. So counties are responsible for those three items: collecting, transporting, and disposing. However, there are still challenges on the governance side of things. For instance, the enforcement of policies, laws, and regulations that also concern marine plastic are siloed in other national agencies like the Kenya Maritime Authority and other national agencies. So I think there is need to develop the capacity of the local authorities, particularly the cities, to coordinate and enforce some of these policies to ensure that the problematic waste is curtailed. With respect to the means to measure the current levels of plastic waste generation in the city, I want to report that with the support of UN Habitat, the Waste-Wise Cities tool was piloted in Mombasa, I think in 2019. And that tool was very, very instrumental in making us establish the amount of waste we generate, and particularly the amount of plastic waste in our waste stream, and how the combustion changes as waste moves from the generators to the final disposal site. I also want to report that as a county, we have developed a mobile application platform that gives real-time tracking of waste generated, waste collected, and the characterization of that waste. And right now, we are just developing the necessary infrastructure to make sure that that application is operationalized. In Mombasa, with respect to which ministry or department is responsible for plastic waste, at the national level, we have the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. At the county level, Mombasa has a specific department called the Environment, Waste Management, and Energy, which then coordinates and is responsible for the management of plastic waste at the county level. There was a question on...
Dr. may I kindly ask you to conclude so we can have then the debate, and I have plenty of questions for you.
Thank you. I'm making the last statement. There was an issue on how we rank the sustainable goals. And for us, I think the SDG 14.1, the SDG 12.5 is highly ranked for us, of course, followed by SDG 11.6 and 12.4. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nato. I really learned a lot, and to be honest with you, I'm not even sure that we have this in Switzerland, all this very developed local and regional system, you know, for dealing with plastic. So I'm very impressed. Graham knew it, so he's also impressed that he knew it. There is lots of questions to you, so stay with us a little bit more, and also Mr. Abe too, because I know again it's very late, but just for a couple of minutes. We will be listening now to Melisa Wilkinson from the city of Buenos Aires, who is in charge, basically with the whole plastic-related policies of such a city as Buenos Aires. How many inhabitants in Buenos Aires, Melisa? You have the floor.
3 million people live in the city of Buenos Aires. So
yeah. Hi, good morning.
Hi. Thank you very much. Well, first I want to thank the Geneva Cities Hub team and the United Nations Environment Assembly for the invitation to the Plastic Wrap Trap event. It is an honor to be part of the team of speakers. A little bit hearing all my colleagues, as it is well known, the use of plastics is widespread in many of the products we purchase on a daily basis. And this, associated with the slow degradation of the plastic materials, generates a problem of excessive accumulation and disproportionate use of natural resources. In the case of the city of Buenos Aires, and similar to my colleague, regarding one of the questions that was the measures taken to reduce the amount of plastics pollution in the environment, the management of the recyclable materials in the city of Buenos Aires is based on an inclusive system, since the regulation established the priority given to pickers when selecting, conditioning, and selling recyclable waste. So our waste management regarding waste recyclable materials is based on urban pickers. For this reason, since the year 2009, a process of formalization of the urban pickers began, where they were provided in a first stage with clothes, personal protection equipment, tools, storage centers where they could segregate all recyclable materials, and were integrated in a cooperative strategy. In a second stage, they were provided with mobile machinery, fixed machinery, and collection trucks. Currently, the government of the city of Buenos Aires has 12 cooperatives with more than 6,500 workers, 144 trucks available, and 16 treatment centers, of which 3 are material recovery facilities. Moreover, to facilitate the segregation at source, because here the citizens are a key for the waste management strategy, the citizens were provided with containers every 150 meters so that they can dispose of their recyclable materials, and a network of 80 fixed green points and 4 mobile green points to raise awareness so that the neighbors can bring their recyclable materials and make any inquiries they may have. At a regulatory level, the city has passed 2 resolutions prohibiting the sale of single-use plastic bags in certain commercial establishments and the sale of single-use plastic straws. Unfortunately, no studies have been presented on the effects of these 2 regulations on the reduction of plastic in landfills. In this way, the management system has been improved over the last 10 years. Nowadays, we are recovering 400 tons of recyclable material per day, where 30% are plastic waste. However, before the pandemic hit, the amount of recyclable materials sent to landfill represented 36% of all the waste, and plastic waste represented 19% of total disposed. Therefore, an estimated of 700 tons per day of plastics were sent to landfill during 2019. This is a huge amount of plastics that we are sending to landfill and we are not recovering. That is why during the year 2020, the government of the city of Buenos Aires presenting a recycling plan that is called Buenos Aires Recicla, which aims to strengthen the social management of the system and improve the infrastructure for initial disposal, collection, and treatment of recyclable waste. There are 3 main goals. The first one is related to cultural change. The second one is related to increase the amount of people that declare the recyclable, that they recycle their material waste by 2023. Like our goal nowadays is 40%, but the aim is to achieve 80% of the population to declare this segregation. And the third goal is to double the amount of recyclable waste that is treated by 2023. In order to meet the proposed objectives, the city promotes the delivery of free indoor containers to segregate recyclable materials at home, and very strong awareness raising campaign aimed at all media and schools. Also, another of the questions was which areas we are working, and we work a lot with United Nations, Waste-Wise City Challenge, Cities 40s, Climate and Clean Air Coalitions. These spaces that, like this event, is clearly very important to learn the good and not that good experiences from all the cities. Just to finish, finally, what we would like to highlight in the framework of this event is that beyond the efforts that local, provincial, and national governments are doing in environmental management strategies, it is clear that companies committed to sustainable systems and citizens committed to environmental issues are required. In this sense, it is necessary for the private sector to focus on implementing eco-friendly designs and sustainable management plans, while we, as consumers, have the obligation to encourage this change and the duty to choose environmentally sustainable products. It is necessary to transform the deeply rooted conception that waste simply disappears and understand that waste is a resource, and that the implementation of circular economy models require the active participation of all those involved in the waste management system, not only the governments. Unfortunately, government decisions in many Latin American countries are based on political strategies, and therefore they tend to be short-term measures that do not solve the problem from the root. This well-known reality means that citizens have the duty to play an active role when it comes to making decisions and to choosing the products we buy. A real paradigm shift in environmental issues is needed so that we can combat climate change and reduce the rate of species extinction. Thank you very much.
Wow, Melisa, thank you so much. That makes us feel well here to listen to very concrete things. I think as diplomats in Geneva, sometimes we lose the concrete ground with things. So thank you very much also to you for these very concrete remarks out of your 8 years experience at Buenos Aires municipality. So now I will turn to the questions which came to the question and answer part, and miracle, we are on time. So what we will do, actually, because there are many questions, is that I will summarize them in like 2 parts. One of them are concretely addressed to speakers, and obviously also looking at the room, we have a hybrid event. So people in my room here, feel free to ask questions by old traditional raising hands, like in the old times. And I will summarize the questions in 2 groups, those who are very concrete and we might not be able to reply, and those who are directed to the what can be included in the treaty. So just to summarize in 1 minute time, the treaty, the international treaty to become, will become out of resolution, and the resolutions or the initial drafts which are negotiated and which will be negotiated are to be found on the website of the UNEP, the slide we have shown. So you go to the clustering of draft resolution and decisions for UNEP-5.2, and you can see what is put forward on the table by the states who have decided to produce these drafts. Starting from there are questions like, can it be included in this negotiation? So to you, Ambassador, but it's not to you, but to the negotiators on the resolution. Things about empty packaging, meaning that when you have packages, you have empty space, which is a concrete issue. I don't know whether the text will go in that direction. Other remarks are about, and this is a concrete remark which can be introduced in the resolution, is that, I quote, African cities lack infrastructures. Should they be pushed to do waste and collect and recycle management? I think it's not only for African cities, but for all the cities. The question is to which extent you will trickle down, whether you will push national states and governments to do recycling, waste and collect management, or it is possible, and this is an open question for you and for negotiators, to trickle it down to subnational governments. We've heard today, it's a small example, that many things actually stays in the hands of the subnational and regional governments, as we've heard from Dr. Nato, also from Melisa and Mr. Abe. So is it possible, it will be acceptable for states if it is a win-win, also to include already in a text in the draft treaty a mention that also local and regional governments must go also in the recycling management and waste management of plastics. Then there are concrete questions, which, as I said, to the different speakers. So for Abe, how do you separate solid biodegradable waste from plastics? And are resident associations supported by local government? So you can also answer through the chat, Abe and Mr. Abe, and we will distribute the reply. There are also some questions about project in Kenya about urban recycling of waste. So probably once again to get back to Dr. Nato to say, to be clear, what do you need directly, Dr. Nato? Imagine that you are a pen holder in an international treaty. What will be helpful for you as governor of a subnational government? What will be helpful for you to see directly in the international treaty? And we all know that the treaties are to be ratified by states. They cannot be legally ratified by subnational governments, but they can be implemented by subnational governments as much as if they are ratified. So what is the value, again, of mentioning subnational governments directly into the text, which is interstate negotiated agreements? Very easy question.
Super easy.
And of course, I know that you are not in the negotiation here directly, so we will not hold any record of what you say.
No. Okay, thank you so much, Kamelia, and thank you to everybody who's listening for the excellent questions. And I think it's important just to look at the fact that what we are doing now is to adopt a mandate for negotiating an agreement. So we are very much at the starting point, and the most important thing that will happen in Nairobi is that we are pushed to that starting point, that we get to a place where we can start the actual negotiations. Then Norway's role as president doesn't really give us the opportunity of putting any text. We are at the service of the states. And that's why we have the major groups that I talked about in my introduction. This is where we need to put in the substance that will make it possible for states, but also for you to at some point be able to make this a useful agreement. So what usually happens when something like this is negotiated is that it is negotiated. We will go into I'm sure a long negotiating process, and all the different aspects will be played into the process. And then in the end, we will end up with a legally binding agreement that will have to go through different countries' parliaments in order to be ratified. But let's look to the future from that, because usually what happens after that is that the states, after they are ratified, have to look at it and say, how will we be able to implement what's in the agreement? And that's where the action plans and the concrete measures come in. And that might seem to be, a long way forward, but to start to think about that now, to look to the future, what is it that we need in the agreement in order to be in a position that we can implement this locally in the future?
Yeah.
So my advice would be to work through the major groups. My advice would be to engage at an early stage together with others to see. So if you look at, and it has many aspects of this have already been explained from different cities' perspectives. But if it's possible to look up from what is immediately needed for you and say, so where does my needs and our priorities meet with others? How can we engage together, across different groups to see what is needed in the treaty in order for it to be helpful on the long run? So again, as always with negotiation like this, this is an intergovernmental process. The states are the most important, but most of us come from countries where we are in a position to play in clear expectations and suggestions to the ones representing us in the negotiations. So my advice would be use the major groups, think and look around the table and see who else has the same goals as us, who else needs what we need in order to push forward, and then to start working at that down. And what is always needed, and the SDGs cannot really be compared, but what we saw in that discussion was that the ability to provide concrete advice and best practices is always needed, and that's what I think what we've heard in the discussion today. We've heard some very clear best practices, and those best practices needs to go from the concrete level and into an understanding. And so in order for this to happen, this particular place, but also in many other cities, what do we need? So that would be my advice, and again, my hope that we will see that engagement and we will see those expectations really made visible in the process as soon as we are at the point where we have a mandate to negotiate. So thank you so much.
Right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Smith, and that will be also what we take out from here, and we will try here at the Geneva Cities to the possible extent to transform these best practices and concrete advices we are getting today into proposed language through the major groups who are negotiating this. Be sure that this reaches out negotiators. I want to give the floor quickly without being compulsory to the speakers. So Dr. Nato, Mr. Rabe, and yes, Miss Wilkinson, I should say to be equal, but Melisa, because I know you personally, that's why I say Melisa and Mr. Rabe and Dr. Nato. So if any of you, or for a minute, if you want to take the floor, let's go in the inverse order. Melisa.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I mean, there are plenty of questions to be honest, but probably we can't reply to all of them within the time. What will be your concrete advice, as I said at the beginning, a concrete, actually, plea for something to be included in an international treaty from your municipal perspective?
Well, it is a difficult question because as a local government, most of the time what happens is what I said, politics, it's a big issue when thinking of long-term strategies. But as we were saying, I guess that what we need is some strategy that not only involves the government, but also all the parties in the waste management. Like nowadays, most of the consequences are for local governments, which do not have financial assistance for this, and most of the governments do not have local governments do not have the expertise for implementing real strategies to reduce pollution. So for us, I think something very important is like a real international commitment in this thing and a financial assistance, especially to those countries that do not have the capacity to implement a waste management strategy. I think these spaces, and United Nations works a lot with it, as well as C40, CCAC, and other international parties. that help very much in teaching and educating local governments in which is the best strategy regarding like how much waste do you generate, which are cycle analysis, life cycle analysis. We do not develop life cycle analysis in any of our waste strategies that we have, for instance, in the city of Buenos Aires. So I think that mainly good help would be for this, to try to work a lot in financing and educating local governments in real waste strategies.
Okay, thank you very much. Useful and concrete. So I turn now to Mr. Abe, and you can also reply directly to the questions which came to you in the chat, or I will then reply to the people in the chat in writing after the event, because we have too many questions. That's really amazing. So please, Mr. Abe, go ahead. 1 minute about the questions you've been asked, if you can. Or if not, what would you like to see in international treaty from your local government point of view?
Thank you very much. Regarding to the international treaty discussion, I want to mention the 2 points. First, I think the flexibility is important. As I explained in the beginning, waste separation disposal method differ depending on the local government in Japan. As the population decreased, the integration of waste treatment infrastructure is processing, but the difference one of the barrier. International agreements, it is necessary to take coordination that such waste treatment systems are different depending on cities or depending on the many countries, and to be able to respond flexibility. And as the second point, I mentioned that the integrated development of the environment and economy. Municipalities have a mission not only to protect the environment, but also to revitalize the local economy. Especially in Japan, the decline of local SMEs, such as retail stores, tourists, and manufacturing, have become the issue. Especially in the COVID-19 pandemic, our local SMEs became very tired. From the perspective of the SDGs, I hope that the international agreement will leave no one behind, including SMEs, and they promote integrated development of environment and economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks, and turning now finally to Dr. Nato to close this first part of the debate. Dr. Nato.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope I'll get it right. First of all, I want to say that if you look at our waste bin is globalized. And what I mean is that as local authorities, we receive plastics that have been produced outside our local authorities, either at the national platform or at the global platform. So whether you want to have legislation specific on empty space inside the packaging, whether you want to have 3 packaging materials on 1 item, it is something I think that can easily be controlled at the point of production, which is in most cases outside the local authorities. So what I will wish to see, for example, at the local authority level, is to have producers, what you call extended producer responsibility. That if you are producing this plastic from wherever it is, you have a responsibility in making sure that those plastics don't find themselves in the environment at the end of the use at the local authority level. With respect to prevention of waste generation, I think this is something that the local authorities can do. And I see an opportunity in engaging the resident associations because it takes a cultural and behavioral angle. That would be my submission.
Thank you very much. A very useful remark to remind that local authorities have to, to deal with things which come from outside. We often forget this. So right now we have very rich, as I said, list of questions, and I personally engage, and I apologize if some questions were misinterpreted, other not replied. We will get back to you, dear people, dear participants who ask questions with the concrete replies, and forward them for the person you've asked. With this, I turn to Graham for the last part of our discussion. But before this, Graham kindly proposed to make a short summary of what came up until now. And Graham, in his previous life, was basically running the coalition of plastics in UN Habitat. So he has a little bit more competence than me on this. Please go ahead.
Well, I looked after the solid waste management program in Habitat for many years. But as a public health engineer, some time back before I joined Habitat, this was my main area of work. So I follow this with huge interest and was delighted to hear from everyone today the depth of knowledge. And I think what's most important is that, these amazing ideas that actually come from the local authorities themselves. I mean, all of these ideas come from you as experts in the field. But it seems to me, if we're carrying these ideas forward, that we need to think about structurally how we can contribute, as the ambassador said. The ideas and the approaches fit into some quite neat, I say neat boxes, but some neat areas. There's an opportunity around reducing the production of waste in the first place, which I think we're all reasonably familiar with, but what that means at a practical level. There's also work to do on the separation and the recycled part, how we can, encourage more recycling. If we can't reduce first, then we can encourage recycling. But there is another area which we haven't heard so much about, which has just as much a threat to the environment as marine pollution, and that's disposal to land. And I mean, as many of you know, the proportion of waste that comes from many countries, it changes depending on the consumption patterns. And in many parts of the world, there's a large proportion of waste that goes to landfills, which has itself severe environmental problems. So there's a range of opportunities that we can look at. We've also heard a few key issues that are very important to this work to carry it forward. And that's the involvement of the communities, not just communities in the role of these issues of reducing waste or recycling, but also the private sector. So the concept of communities and the contact that city governments have with those communities is incredibly important, because that, cities more often know best their full, the range of their communities, their community groups, their private sector. So it's a very important area there. We heard about the issue of legislation, and I think it's quite often forgotten that the ability of a local authority to produce bylaws that can very quickly be enacted to address some of these issues. So yes, the inertia and the length of time for national governments to enact legislation, of course, is difficult, but there's quite an opportunity for cities and local authorities to be very responsive quite quickly. I mean, you saw how with the COVID pandemic, how many local authorities could immediately put in place good practices, and in many respects, those cities led the charge, if you like. The same can be applied to solid waste management. There was another also very interesting part, and I mean from our dear colleague in Buenos Aires, but the issue there of focusing on the job creation aspects of solid waste management. And I mean, one of my first jobs when I came into Habitat was to look at small-scale recycling industries in Asian cities. And I learned from a very early age that the contribution that recycling and such green industry can make to contribution to job markets is actually quite significant. And if you extend that to the advocacy and all these other things that can be done by local authorities, it really is a win-win situation. You can employ people in this sector. I think I'm not going to say very much more there, other than that, you know, solid waste and plastic waste in particular pollutes all three environmental media. It pollutes water through the ocean and rivers, it pollutes land, and of course, we haven't heard it yet, but air pollution as well. Many, informal dump sites around the world spontaneously burn and create a huge contribution to air pollution and indirectly to health, not just to the people and the scavengers who work on waste sites, but to city populations as well. So it really is a win-win situation if we can look much more closely at solid waste, which is this forgotten cousin, if you like, of environmental infrastructure. The money goes into the water sector and providing people with water and sanitation, which are of course important, but the issue of solid waste gets pushed to one side. It's got to the stage now where we can't really delay anymore, so it's important that we focus on it. And this is what a marvellous opportunity the upcoming UNEP has to change the way waste is seen and how it works. So with those few words, sorry to ramble on, we're going to go to the next part of the proceedings, and we have two speakers now, one of which I know very well because I used to work very closely with her, but they're going to sort of set the scene onto some of the tools that have been developed. So we're going to hear from one of my colleagues at UN Habitat, Takeuchi, who has led a lot of the work on setting up the monitoring system under the SDGs for solid waste, because as you probably all know, waste management sits under several SDGs. It sits under the monitoring of waste production sits under SDG 11, the recycling work sits under SDG 12, and of course, you know, there's something in the health goal and everywhere else. So now, Takeuchi, over to you now. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, Graham, and I've been very interested to listen to the discussion so far. I'm just wondering if you can see my presentation.
Yes.
Here.
Yeah.
Great. So just I would like to give you a little bit of a quick presentation about what is really happening in terms of the plastic pollution in cities, and also the city's roles in the global agreement on marine litter and plastic pollution based on the findings so far, which we have developed the monitoring methodology. So just before going into the more detail about our findings of the SDG 11.6.1 monitoring so far, I would like to mention this Waste by Cities program of UN Habitat, which is kind of a network of cities committed to improve solid waste management. And currently we have the city network has been growing into more than 230 member cities with the outreach of 150 million inhabitants, and predominantly the participation from Africa is quite dominant. And then this is kind of a reflection of the challenges being faced by the many cities in African continent, I would say. So this is a Waste by Cities tool. UN Habitat launched this monitoring methodology of SDG indicator 11.6.1, which is measuring the proportion of municipal solid waste collected and managed in controlled facilities out of total municipal solid waste generated by the city. Basically, this indicator is measuring the proportion of municipal solid waste properly managed in the city. And this helps the cities to assess municipal solid waste generated, collected, and treated in controlled facilities, which is kind of essential indicators and data that you can base your policy and interventions to improve the solid waste management. This also helps cities to identify municipal solid waste recovery chain, and then it acts as both private and public sector, while engaging them in the inclusive and participatory way. And then also this helps cities to check the environmental control level of the waste management facilities, establish better waste and resource management strategies that create business and livelihood opportunities, and provide the data for large waste management infrastructure investment cases to municipal corporation and waste stakeholders and investors. And then finally, UN Habitat, through this Waste Cities program, is supporting cities to develop a project and a fund mobilization to really create impact on the ground. So the data, the application of this Waste Cities from the UN Habitat point of view is the starting point for the impacts on the ground. So this is one of the example from Mombasa. As Dr. Nato mentioned, we have worked together with them to measure the SDG 11.6.1 in Mombasa. So currently, what we found out in the survey, we found that the 700 tons per day is generated, and of which 30 tons is received by recovery facilities, and about 371 is reaching to disposal facilities. However, which is now leaving almost half of the waste generated in Mombasa uncollected. So all in all, the 56% is collected and 5% managed in control facilities in Mombasa. And there's a clear lack of infrastructure in there, and then also the vehicles to provide the waste collection services, especially in the low to low income areas. And based on these data, we calculated the city plastic leakage, which found to be 3.7 kg per person per year in Mombasa, and which is equivalent to every single person in Mombasa is throwing 1.5 liter PET bottle into the ocean every day. So that you really can see and feel the magnitude of the plastic pollution happening because of the mismanagement and the lack of financial and technological capacity in African cities. And then this is an example from Lagos. And then this is also very interesting findings so far that we did in the survey last year. So that everybody has been thinking that the composition of plastic is about 10%, especially from low-income areas. But what we found out in Lagos is plastic composition is almost 40%. 40% is massive, and then why is because the people in the slums or like low-income areas in Lagos, they are using lots of monodose sachets, and then that accumulates, and then usually the people who are living in the slums or low-income areas in Lagos do not have an access to waste collection services. So that translated into 17 kg per person per year of plastic is leaking to the water bodies in Lagos. It's a second largest city in Africa, next to Kinshasa. And then what we did in a survey in Kinshasa is that the waste collection rate is almost 0% in Kinshasa. So you really can feel the magnitude of the plastic pollution happening, especially in low to middle income countries. And then also under the Waste Cities tool, we developed this a ladder of service, access to service of a access to waste collection service. So we also did a survey, household survey in Kenya and Uganda. And this is the result. So basically the non-slum residents in Kenya and Uganda has got like access to basic level of waste collection service without major littering. 60% of the people has got the access to basic waste collection service. However, if you look at the slums, so the slum residents, like almost 90% of the people do not have an access to waste collection services. So translating all this data that we collected last year, so where's the plastic leakage source? First of all, we can say this is a slum where people don't have an access to waste collection services. So the solution should be how to provide a waste collection services into slum where people cannot probably afford the waste collection services that we are receiving usually. So this is a picture from Madare slum in Kenya, and this is also Kibera in Nairobi, and this is Haiti. So it's like the water canals and the drainage is filled up with the small plastic sachets everywhere. So this is also like some indication, you can feel where the problem is. And this is also something that we have found so far. Last year, we did this waste-wise cities tour survey in more than 50 cities. And the plastic leakage is also happening in the many not well-financed collection systems. So this is transfer station in Santo Domingo. So this transfer station basically cannot get enough amount of money to buy the fuel to bring all the waste coming to the transfer station. So as a result, that the transfer station basically became a leakage point. This is a transfer station in Karachi. Now you can see this is the waste pickers shacks here, and then like it became a leakage point. And then lots of so this transfer station actually is a quick win project, can be actually done. The improvement of the transfer station can be quickly done, and that has a great impact. So this is also something that we have found so far. And then we are really expanding this SDG 11.6.1 and application of waste-wise cities tool all over the cities, together with different partners, including UNEP and WWF, GIZ, JICA, and then Alliance to End Plastic Waste, and so on. And we're trying to really use this data to really create the impacts on the ground. And then in addition to this, I would like to also, I'm so sorry for taking too much time, but we also did a quick questionnaire survey for the member cities on local and regional governments' voice for global agreement for the marine litter and plastic pollution. So this is a kind of profile of the respondents. So 41% is a local regional government and authorities, and 36% was in the NGO. And then all the 78% of the respondents are actually coming from the Africa cities. So these are kind of a key insights. So we asked about the specific issues to be addressed through an international agreement, especially bringing the municipal level of insights. So first of all, is that the implementation of extended producer responsibility through strong policy reform is urgently needed. And this is a very important mechanism to really finance the waste collection services in the slums and informal settlements, because many people cannot even afford the waste collection services. And then also the second thing is mentioned that the private sector participation and ownership covering all stages of plastic life cycle, specifically controls on plastic production and unnecessary packaging. So we have to really kind of think about what are the alternatives for the small packages. You can see in slums, people cannot really, maybe like a vending machine where you can bring some container to fill up the milk or fill up a detergent and so on. This is kind of a solution. So something that should be also look at this, especially for the private sector. And involvement in issues managed at the national level is 25% of participants wanted greater involvement by local authorities in issues managed at the national level. And additional 33% conveyed a need for local authorities to be involved in 1, implementation of laws, 2, measures that relating awareness, and 3, training around the substitution and reduction of plastics, and then also the single-use plastics. And then we also asked the several questions. What kind of SDGs do you think important for municipal planning? How high do you rank the following sustainable development goals? So all the waste SDG indicators found to be of importance and a priority in municipal planning. However, the highest demand SDG 11.6.1, 41% people rated 8 to 10, sorry. And then SDG 12.5, which is a national recycling rate, and it was ranked the highest, 50%. So that you really can see the municipal levels interest in the global agreement on managing plastic pollution for really addressing the challenges they are facing every single day. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for the time, for the opportunity for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much now for presenting that really very clear work. I mean, this shows the importance of having good monitoring systems and how we need to dig deeper to the subnational level and to the city level to understand, as we always used to call it, the polluter pays principle. We need to know, in this case, plastic waste, where the source of the pollution is. Some of that work in the developing world has shown large proportions come from the low-income areas, so we have to find policy and technical approaches to deal with that. So without wasting any more time, I'd like to go to our last speaker this afternoon, Ms. Yumi Nishikawa, who's the lead of the Plastic Smart Cities Initiative at the World Wildlife Fund. Over to you.
Hi, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity and inviting, WWF Plastic Smart Cities to join the conversation. I mean, we think the local governments and municipalities are the agencies on the ground that has the power to make real changes, and they have the best knowledge, of course, of the needs, gaps, capacities of their citizen and the environment that they live in. And in Plastic Smart Cities, we understand this and work with a handful of pilot cities in Asia to implement innovative or sometimes not so innovative, but to support them in allowing different practices of pilots, helping them provide support directly on the ground with the help of NORAD as well. And we would like to thank specifically NORAD, TV Action, and the people of Norway for their support in allowing us to expand our program. And we also want to acknowledge we worked with partners such as the UN Habitat team. So now, and we continue to ask partners as well who we work with to work with us, to work with local governments who are the real change makers that can start to move the needle in reducing plastic pollution. And why do we work in cities? Because we believe that the cities can set good examples on how they can start to tackle plastic issues. Cities and local municipalities and local governments can inspire and also share knowledge amongst each other globally, as well as also pressuring and putting that pressure at the national level when there are national agendas being made in UNEP and all like other legally binding agreements. So I also prepared a very short one slide of a presentation of how in WWF Plastic Smart Cities, we try to work with the cities here in Southeast Asia and China. If I could please have the one-pager slide. If that's not possible, I can just talk about it. So in Plastic Smart Cities, essentially, we have two phases in how we work with our cities. The first phase is really helping the cities identify where the gaps are. Therefore, we work with NOW's team in UN Habitat, for example, to help the cities to scope, create a waste flow diagram using the WasteWise Cities tools as well. And really being able to show the cities where their gaps and needs are, where their weak points are within the city. And then we ask the cities that we work with to also create a city action plan, a long-term strategy in how to tackle some of the issues that they see. And then the phase two of the implementation is really where WWF comes in with a range of potential interventions and projects, such as anything ranging from policy interventions to, providing roundtables, but also, rolling our sleeves up and creating infrastructure on the ground, bringing innovations, bringing, entrepreneurial solutions on the ground to test, pilot sort of some of those potential answers that the city could then replicate across the many locations that they have, and hopefully our target will be that within the next 5 years that the cities that we work in Southeast Asia will show a 30% reduction of plastic leaking into the nature by 2025. And my presentation is really short, and I just wanted to thank everyone who is on the call and all the panelists as well for this opportunity. That's it from WWF side.
Thank you very much, Yumi. Yeah, we are in a perfect, harmony with you. So go ahead.
No, well, thank you very much, Yumi, for making some very. We of course, as Habitat, enjoy a great relationship with the nature of this plastic work. So it's very, very important to us. So I think, do we have any further questions or anything that we want to ask any of the panelists? Do we have anything from the floor?
I think so. We have. You, yeah. Please go ahead.
Yes, I have another note to share. Because yes, municipalities and cities network, it's implemented already in the continental level, and it is not on behalf of humanitarian framework, even that it is very strategic. Another network, smart cities, plastic smart cities, very interesting, because other processes are still going on in other UN agencies. But my contribution, if it didn't be raised, I will share with you, as you said, African countries. And let's see the LDCs process, the UN LDCs process current these development countries. Yes, and which is still going on, and the target for 10 years. And the Congress next March, we go to Qatar for LDCs Congress. That if we when plastic, you have to see in some countries, yes, it is pollution, plastic, or plastic consumption pollutions. But if we implemented that in the LDCs process for the next Congress, next March, which is strategic, and in this Congress there is also targeted will be adopted for the next 10 years. This will be a very, very highly strategic in the international negotiation. This is my contribution.
Thank you. I've retained that next March there will be something in Qatar, so let me come back to you. Thank you very much. Diana, you wanted to come back on the two resolutions which are on the table?
Yes, because on the comments that were brought either on the written questions or by the speakers today, some address the need to address the whole life cycle of plastics, and indeed in terms of life cycle approach, the Rwanda Peru resolution promotes a full life cycle approach with interventions envisioned on production, I mean, at all the stages, while the Japan resolution refers to the plastic life cycle also, but it includes more emphasis on downstream interventions. And then we also saw on the images that were shared and on the comments about the need of addressing plastic pollution not only at the marine level but at other levels. And at this stage, the Rwanda Peru resolution seeks to address plastic pollution in all the environments, and the Japan focuses more on marine litter pollution. And all these elements is a link that you can share, and then on the webpage of the event, there are tables that I mentioned earlier that are comparing the resolutions and what they offer. And we see here that for the local authorities, the local governments, it's important to address the full life cycle. That's at least what I understood from the comments, and also plastic in all environments.
Yeah. Well, as usual in multilateral fora, what can happen is that the two resolutions on the table might merge, or they might be adopted one and another, or one or another could be withdrawn. I mean, everything is possible. What we will be pleading today is whatever happens in the final text, again, there is a language about local and regional governments, which is unfortunately not the case today in the Peruvian Rwandan resolution. But once again, I would believe that this is an oubli, or a simple forgetting. While anyway, we're not making any competition of text, but the important part of the today discussion was really to say that resolution should be tackling the issue on local and regional governments. I am not familiar with the UNEP process. I am more classical Geneva-based, New York-based multilateral diplomat. But usually in a preambular part of the resolutions adopted on the Human Rights Council or General Assembly or elsewhere in these bodies, you have a preambular part which also serves to enumerate or to show what has been done by the UN agencies or the other instruments. So I would clearly see the value, if this is possible, of a preambular part of whichever text is adopted, and in this preambular part mentioning this huge work by UN Habitat, also the huge city work. There might be other UN Habitat documents which are not only related to local and regional governments, but clearly in the preambular part of any adopted resolution and then the treaty to become, I think there is a value to mention, and the Smart Plastic Cities huge major initiative of WWF and the UN Habitat work, probably UNEP, I am not aware of all the work, but to enumerate already the work which has been done. So there is also this information part in the preambular part of the resolution, which actually reflects the whole worldwide work which has been done by UN agencies and other stakeholders. So with this, I'm asked also by my colleagues, Pauline and Tu, thank you very much, dear colleagues. And Tu is co-director of the Geneva Cities Hub, and Pauline is the communication officer. They were super active. I mean, they're probably even they are a little bit also hand-aching to reply to all the questions. It was very lively discussion. We tried to reply to questions in the chat. We will distribute the chat. We will reply to other particular question if there are some which has not been addressed. We will settle, I think, on our website to start with and ask Diana to refer to this in the Gen and others, of a set of proposals, which will be probably proposals formulated after the today event for the negotiators and the major groups, to be taken into account about local and regional governments, particular language and follow-up. If we are bold enough, we can even address ourselves to the two co-facilitators. As you mentioned, Ambassador, you are president of the whole UNEA, but there are two co-facilitators, Ambassador Damptey Bediako Azare from Ghana and Robert Bunbury from Canada. They're in charge of these two resolutions, to merge them, to marry them, to divorce them somehow, to come to a happy end, if possible, of this negotiation of an international treaty. Thank you very much to the UN Habitat team, Nele and Neo, and also Gino, who helped me so much, to all the participants. I will not enumerate them, Yumi, and I've been in touch with probably 10 people from WWF, and so I'm taking the train very soon next week to go to this Blonde municipality 20 kilometers from here to meet probably more of your colleagues here and you one day. Thank you to the people in the room for participating, and dear Graham for the cooperation. Last word, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, so delighted to be with you all here and to do this, one of the series of the Geneva Urban Debates. Again, very topical. As I think Kamelia said, you know, the discussion doesn't stop now. So for you partners, if you have ideas about additional thoughts about, you know, language we can bring in, please share with us. Yeah. We will try and consolidate and put it in front of the right people. But it's a critical area of work for us and UNEP, of course. And you know, it's not going to go away. It's only going to get worse as the world urbanizes faster.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's meet again and see whether this disappears from the Swiss hotels next year. Thank you to all of you, Ambassador, friends, colleagues, and yeah, have a nice morning, evening, and night. Thank you and goodbye.